The message was cryptic, a ghost in the machine. It flared, a momentary blip on the sensor arrays of the orbital listening posts, then vanished. A fragment of a distress beacon, barely coherent, but undeniably there. The source, the graveyard corridor, a region of space infamous for swallowing ships whole. Years ago, 2 colony vessels, the Aurora Path and the Dauntless, vanished within that region, bound for Kepler 186f, a world painted gold in the dreams of a dying Earth. No debris, no escape pods, no trace whatsoever. Just silence. Then, sporadic anomalies began appearing. Whispers of electromagnetic disturbances, fleeting distortions in spacetime, all centered around a single, elusive point in the void. The official reports labeled it a navigational hazard, a region to be avoided. Unofficially, whispers circulated, tales of a dimensional tear, a gateway to another reality, a place where the lost ships might still exist. Theories ranged from scientific to fantastical, most dismissed as the ramblings of grief-stricken families desperate for closure. Now, decades later, the whispers had returned, louder, more insistent. And this time, someone was listening. Part 1, The Solace Ascends. Captain Lyra Chen stood on the bridge of the Solace, a vessel as sleek and purposeful as her own demeanor. The bridge was a symphony of soft blues and whites, holographic displays shimmering with data. Around her, the crew moved with practiced efficiency, a well-oiled machine responding to her every command. "Status report," she said, her voice calm and steady, a voice forged in the crucible of loss and responsibility. Commander Raj Thorne, her second-in-command, a man etched with the weariness of countless battles, turned from his station. "All systems nominal, Captain. Approaching the designated jump point. ETA to Graveyard Corridor, 1 hour." His voice held a hint of skepticism, a constant undercurrent in their interactions. Thorne was a pragmatist, a soldier who saw the universe as a battlefield, not a laboratory. "Thank you, Commander," Lyra replied, her gaze fixed on the star charts displayed before her. The Graveyard Corridor. The name itself hinted at the darkness that awaited them. This mission was more than just a scientific survey, more than just checking for echoes of a lost tragedy. It was a pilgrimage, a chance at redemption. Lyra had lost her family to a similar colonization mission, a technological failure that had left her orphaned, consumed by a grief that time had only dulled, not erased. This time, she wouldn't fail. This time, she would find the truth. Dr. Ellen Core, the mission's lead physicist, approached the command chair, her eyes alight with an almost manic energy. "Captain, the latest data is fascinating. The EM pulses are repeating at increasingly regular intervals. It's as if something is trying to communicate." Ellen was a whirlwind of theoretical physics and boundless enthusiasm, her theories often bordering on the outlandish. "Communicate what, Doctor?" Thorne interjected, his voice laced with dry amusement. "Perhaps the long-dead colonists are trying to order pizza." Ellen bristled. "Commander, I understand your skepticism, but the data is undeniable. This is not a random occurrence. This is a structured signal, exhibiting characteristics consistent with." She paused, drawing a breath. "A dimensional anomaly." Lyra held up a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "Let's stick to the facts, Doctor. We're going in with open minds, but grounded in scientific rigor." The Solace executed the jump, spacetime folding and unfolding around them in a dizzying instant. They emerged into the Graveyard Corridor, a region of space that lived up to its name. Streaks of cosmic dust painted the black canvas, like tears on a morning face. The silence was palpable, broken only by the hum of the ship's engines. "Initiate long-range scans," Lyra ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know everything about this place." The crew responded, their fingers dancing across the consoles, their eyes glued to the displays. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the tension on the bridge thickening with each passing second. Then, Specialist Nova Rain, the ship's pilot, spoke, her voice unusually subdued. Nova was a cybernetically enhanced prodigy, her reflexes honed to superhuman levels, her brain wired directly into the ship's systems. She was usually a whirlwind of energy, but now, she seemed different. "Captain," Nova said, her eyes locked on a point in the distance. I feel something. Like a vibration, a resonance. It's coming from that direction." A collective hush fell over the bridge. All eyes turned to where Nova was pointing. At first, there was nothing. Just empty space, the cold, indifferent void. Then, it appeared. A shimmer, a distortion in the fabric of spacetime. It looked like starlight refracted through broken glass, a kaleidoscope of colors swirling and shifting. It emitted no energy, no gravity, just light. A soft, ethereal glow that seemed to beckon them closer. "What is it?" Thorne asked, his voice devoid of its usual cynicism. "That, Commander," Ellen said, her voice trembling with excitement, "is the Ghostlight." Part 2, Whispers of the Rift. The Ghostlight hung before them, an impossible phenomenon defying all known laws of physics. Lyra stared at it, mesmerized, a knot forming in her stomach. It was beautiful, terrifying, and utterly alien. "Captain," Thorne said, his voice urgent, "I advise against approaching it. We have no idea what that thing is capable of." "I concur," the ship's AI, a sophisticated system named Athena, chimed in. Athena was a memory-anchored AI, meaning her core personality was based on the digitized consciousness of a brilliant, albeit eccentric, scientist. She was usually a calm, reliable presence, but even her voice held a note of unease. The anomaly's energy signature is inconsistent and unpredictable. Approaching it poses a significant risk to the ship and crew. Lyra hesitated. Thorne and Athena were right. Approaching the Ghostlight was reckless, potentially suicidal. But the whispers of the lost ships, the faint echoes of hope, were too strong to ignore. "Prepare a probe," she said, her voice resolute. "I want a full sensor sweep of the anomaly. No manned approach until we have a better understanding of what we're dealing with." The crew sprang into action, launching a small, unmanned probe towards the Ghostlight. The probe disappeared into the shimmering distortion, its trajectory swallowed by the anomaly. The bridge fell silent, everyone holding their breath as they waited for the probe's data to return. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Then, the screens flickered, static filled the air, and the probe's feed came online. What they saw chilled them to the bone. The probe was broadcasting a live image from within the Ghostlight. It showed the Solace, their own ship, hanging in the void, its hull gleaming under the ethereal light. But it wasn't their Solace. The colors were slightly off, the lines subtly distorted. It was a mirror image, a twisted reflection of their own reality. And then, the camera panned, revealing the bridge of the mirrored Solace. Standing on the bridge, staring back at them, were their doppelgangers. Exact copies of themselves, their faces etched with a mixture of shock and recognition. "What the hell is going on?" Thorne exclaimed, his hand instinctively reaching for his sidearm. It's a dimensional echo," Ellen stammered, her eyes wide with disbelief. "A parallel reality, a mirror universe. I can't believe it." Lyra stared at her mirrored self, a wave of nausea washing over her. The other Lyra Chen looked back, her eyes filled with an unsettling mixture of grief and triumph. "Captain," Athena said, her voice strained, "I am detecting a significant energy surge emanating from the anomaly. It's destabilizing. I recommend immediate withdrawal. Lyra ignored the warning. She couldn't turn back now. Not when she was so close to the truth. Prepare to cross the rift, she ordered, her voice steely. All hands, brace for potential turbulence. Thorn looked at her, his eyes filled with concern. Lyra, are you sure about this? We're playing with forces we don't understand. I know, Raj, she said, her voice softening. But we have to try. We owe it to the lost ships, to the families who never got closure. And maybe we owe it to ourselves. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the unknown. Engage. The Solace surged forward, plunging headfirst into the Ghostlight. Part 3, Echoes of the Past. The moment they crossed the rift, reality twisted and shuddered around them. The ship bucked and groaned, alarms blaring as systems struggled to maintain equilibrium. The crew clung to their stations, their faces pale with terror. Lyra fought to maintain control, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. Her vision blurred, memories flickering in and out of focus. She saw flashes of her childhood home, her parents' faces, the fiery crash that had taken their lives. But these weren't her memories. They were different. Distorted. As if seen through a shattered mirror. Report, she yelled, her voice barely audible above the cacophony. Navigation is offline. Thorn shouted back. We're drifting, Captain. Sensors are haywire. Ellen cried. Readings are fluctuating wildly. The laws of physics are breaking down. Athena's voice was a garbled mess of static. Critical systems, integrity compromised, reality, unstable. The Solace drifted through the paleverse, a twisted reflection of their own universe. The stars were dimmer, the planets barren, the silence profound. It was a world of echoes, of faded memories, of half-formed realities. Then, they saw it. Looming in the distance, a ghostly silhouette against the stardusted canvas. A ship. The Aurora Path. The ship was intact, eerily pristine, as if time had stood still since its disappearance. It drifted silently, a tomb in the void, a monument to humanity's lost dreams. Prepare to dock, Lyra ordered, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and dread. I want a full boarding party. Proceed with extreme caution. The crew, still shaken from the passage through the rift, moved with renewed purpose, eager to find answers, eager to find survivors. Lyra joined the boarding party, determined to be among the first to set foot on the lost ship. As they approached the airlock, a chilling silence descended. They breached the airlock, the hissing of escaping air echoing through the empty corridors. They entered the Aurora Path, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. The ship was deserted. Dust lay thick on every surface, the air stale and heavy. The crew moved cautiously, their weapons raised, their senses on high alert. They found the bridge, the control panels still illuminated, the chairs empty. They found the mess hall, the tables set for a meal that was never eaten. They found the crew quarters, the beds neatly made, the personal belongings untouched. It was as if the crew had vanished into thin air. Then, Lyra found something that made her blood run cold. In the captain's quarters, lying on the desk, was a logbook. She picked it up, her hands trembling. The logbook was written in her handwriting. But she had never served aboard the Aurora Path. The entries detailed the ship's journey, the challenges they faced, the hopes they harbored. They spoke of the excitement of reaching Kepler 186f, the anticipation of building a new home for humanity. But then, the entries began to change. They spoke of strange anomalies, of temporal distortions, of unsettling dreams. They spoke of the Ghostlight, a gateway to another reality, a place where the laws of physics didn't apply. The final entry was chilling. We're through the looking glass now. I don't know what awaits us on the other side. But I know one thing, this place is not broken. We are. Lyra closed the logbook, her mind reeling. What did it mean? What had happened to the crew of the Aurora Path? And why was her handwriting in the logbook? Then, one of the crew members called out. Captain! We found something. Lyra rushed to the designated location, a large, sealed chamber deep within the ship's hull. The crew had managed to open the chamber, revealing a stasis pod. Inside the pod, suspended in cryogenic sleep, was a figure. A figure that looked exactly like Lyra Chen. Part 4, Shadow Chen. The discovery of the duplicate Lyra Chen sent shockwaves through the crew. They stared at her, transfixed, unsure of what to make of the impossible sight. Lyra herself felt a strange mix of disbelief and recognition. It was like looking into a mirror, but seeing a reflection of a life she had never lived. Bring her out, she ordered, her voice barely a whisper. The crew carefully extracted the stasis pod and began the thawing process. As the ice melted away, the duplicate Lyra Chen stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked around, her gaze settling on Lyra. Her eyes widened, a look of confusion and fear crossing her face. Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "You're aboard the Aurora Path," Lyra said, her voice gentle. "We found you in stasis." The duplicate Lyra Chen blinked, her eyes darting around the room. "The Aurora Path. But I thought. What do you remember?" Lyra asked. The duplicate Lyra Chen closed her eyes, her brow furrowed in concentration. I remember the Ghostlight. We were trying to cross it, to find a new world, a new hope. But something went wrong. The ship, it started to break apart. I remember, dying." Lyra stared at her, stunned. "Dying? But you're alive." The duplicate Lyra Chen shook her head, her eyes filled with a profound sadness. "No. I died. I remember it. But somehow. I'm here. Again." "Who are you?" Thorne asked, his voice skeptical. "I'm Lyra Chen," she said, her voice defiant. "Just like her. But I'm not the same. I've seen things, experienced things. I can't explain it." Lyra approached her duplicate, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached out a hand, and the duplicate Lyra Chen flinched. Can I call you Shadow?" Lyra asked. The duplicate Lyra Chen hesitated, then nodded. "Shadow. Yes. That sounds right." As they talked, Lyra learned more about Shadow's memories, about the events that had led to the disappearance of the Aurora Path. Shadow described the growing instability of the Paleverse, the way reality warped and fractured around them. She spoke of the crew's descent into madness, their obsession with the Ghostlight and its potential to rewrite their tragedies. "They thought they could fix everything," Shadow said, her voice filled with despair. "They thought they could bring back the dead, erase their mistakes. But they were wrong. The Ghostlight doesn't offer salvation. It offers oblivion." Lyra listened, her mind racing. She realized that Shadow's warnings were more than just the ramblings of a traumatized survivor. They were a desperate plea, a warning to avoid the same fate that had befallen the Aurora Path. But Ellen Core was not listening. The physicist had become obsessed with Shadow, seeing her as a living proof of her theories about parallel realities and temporal manipulation. "This is incredible!" Ellen exclaimed, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We can use the Ghostlight to rewrite history, to create a better future for humanity. No, Doctor, Shadow said, her voice sharp. You don't understand. The Ghostlight is not a tool. It's a sentient boundary. It reshapes reality based on your intent. If you try to control it, it will control you. Ellen dismissed her warnings, convinced that she was on the verge of a scientific breakthrough. She began to formulate plans to use the Ghostlight to correct the mistakes of the past, starting with the failed colonization mission that had claimed Lyra's family. Lyra watched her, her heart sinking. She knew that Ellen was playing with fire, that she was on a path to destruction. But how could she stop her? How could she convince her that some things are better left untouched? Part 5, The Fabric Unravels. As Ellen delved deeper into her research, the Paleverse began to unravel around them. Temporal distortions became more frequent, memories began to merge and overlap, and the crew started to experience strange, unsettling déjà vu. One day, Nova died. She was on a routine patrol, investigating a strange energy signature emanating from a nearby asteroid. Her ship was struck by a sudden burst of energy, and she was killed instantly. Lyra mourned her loss, her heart heavy with grief. Nova had been a valuable member of the crew, a skilled pilot, and a good friend. The next day, Nova walked back on board the Solace. She was alive. She remembered everything that had happened, her death, the explosion, the darkness. But she wasn't the same. Her eyes were different, her movements were jerky, her voice was monotone. She spoke of things she couldn't possibly know, of events that had never happened. It was as if she had been replaced by a copy, a distorted echo of the original Nova. The crew was terrified. They whispered about the Ghostlight, about its power to warp reality, to bring back the dead. They wondered who would be next. Thorne, ever the pragmatist, urged Lyra to quarantine Nova, to prevent her from spreading whatever infection she had contracted. But Lyra refused. She couldn't bring herself to treat Nova like a monster. She believed that there was still some part of the original Nova left inside, trapped within the distorted shell. She tried to talk to Nova, to reach out to her, to remind her of who she was. But it was no use. Nova remained detached, unresponsive, lost in her own fractured reality. The Paleverse was consuming them, reshaping them into something else. Lyra realized that she had to act, that she had to stop Ellen before it was too late. She confronted the physicist, pleading with her to abandon her research, to leave the Ghostlight alone. But Ellen refused to listen. She was too far gone, blinded by her ambition, consumed by her obsession. I'm so close, Lyra, she said, her eyes burning with fanaticism. I can feel it. I can rewrite everything, make everything better. You'll understand, once I've succeeded. Lyra knew that she couldn't reason with her. She had only one option left. She ordered Thorne to arrest Ellen, to confine her to the brig. Ellen resisted, fighting with a strength that belied her small frame. But Thorne overpowered her, dragging her away, kicking and screaming. With Ellen out of the way, Lyra turned her attention to the Ghostlight. She knew that they couldn't stay in the Paleverse any longer. The longer they remained, the more they would be consumed, the more they would lose themselves. But escaping the Paleverse was not going to be easy. The Ghostlight was unstable, its energy fluctuating wildly. The only way to stabilize it, to create a safe passage back to their own reality, was to destroy the artifact that was acting as the anchor point. That artifact was located deep within the heart of the Aurora Path. Part 6, The Anchor Node. Lyra assembled a team, including Thorne, Shadow, and a handful of trusted crew members. They armed themselves and prepared to enter the Aurora Path one last time. As they approached the ship, the Paleverse seemed to push back, the temporal distortions intensifying, the memories blurring. They saw glimpses of other realities, other timelines, other versions of themselves. Shadow became increasingly agitated, her memories flooding back, her sense of identity fragmenting. "Don't go in there," she pleaded with Lyra. "It's a trap. It will consume you." "I know," Lyra said, her voice resolute. "But we have to try. We have to stop this before it spreads any further." They boarded the Aurora path, the ship eerily silent, the air thick with dread. They navigated the twisted corridors, their senses on high alert, their weapons raised. They reached the chamber that housed the anchor node, a pulsating orb of energy that throbbed with an unsettling rhythm. The orb was guarded by a force field, powered by a complex network of generators. Thorn and the crew members worked to disable the force field, while Lyra and Shadow stood guard, watching for any sign of trouble. As they waited, Shadow began to convulse, her body racked by tremors. She gasped for breath, her eyes filled with terror. "I remember," she said, her voice strained. "I remember what happened here. The crew, they went mad. They turned on each other. They wanted to control the Ghostlight, to rewrite their own pasts. But it consumed them. It twisted them. It turned them into monsters." She pointed to the shadows that flickered in the corners of the room. "They're still here. Waiting. Watching." Lyra strained her eyes, trying to see what Shadow was seeing. But she saw nothing. Just shadows. Then, the lights flickered. The force field deactivated. Thorn and the crew members cheered, their faces alight with relief. But their celebration was cut short. From the shadows, figures emerged. Twisted, grotesque figures, their bodies contorted into unnatural shapes, their eyes burning with a malevolent hunger. They were the crew of the Aurora path. They had become something else. The monsters attacked, their claws slashing, their teeth bared. The crew fought back, firing their weapons, but the monsters were too strong, too fast, too numerous. One by one, the crew members fell, their screams echoing through the chamber. Thorn was wounded, his arm slashed by a monster's claws. He collapsed to the ground, his face contorted with pain. Lyra stood her ground, firing her weapon, her aim steady, her resolve unwavering. But she knew that she couldn't win. She was outnumbered, outmatched. Then, Shadow stepped forward. She stood before the monsters, her arms outstretched, her eyes closed. "Take me," she said, her voice calm, almost serene. "I'm the one you want. I'm the one who remembers." The monsters hesitated, their eyes fixed on Shadow. They seemed to recognize her, to understand her. Then, they surged forward, their claws tearing at her flesh. Shadow screamed, her voice a piercing wail that echoed through the chamber. Lyra watched in horror as the monsters tore Shadow apart, consuming her memories, absorbing her essence. When they were finished, Shadow was gone. The monsters turned to Lyra, their eyes burning with a renewed hunger. Lyra closed her eyes, bracing herself for the end. But it never came. Instead, she felt a surge of energy, a wave of power that washed over her, cleansing her, empowering her. She opened her eyes, and she saw the anchor node. It was glowing, pulsating with light, resonating with her own energy. She understood. Shadow had sacrificed herself to give her the strength to destroy the anchor node. Lyra raised her weapon, her hand trembling. She fired. The anchor node exploded, a blinding flash of light that obliterated everything in its path. Part 7, Homecoming. Lyra woke up on the bridge of the Solace, her head throbbing, her body aching. She looked around, disoriented, unsure of what was real and what was a dream. Thorn was there, his arm in a sling, his face etched with fatigue. Ellen was gone, presumably still locked in the brig. The Solace was drifting in space, the Ghostlight gone, the Paleverse a distant memory. What happened? Lyra asked, her voice hoarse. You did it, Captain, Thorne said, his voice filled with admiration. You destroyed the anchor node. You saved us all. Lyra nodded, her mind still struggling to process everything that had happened. What about Shadow? She asked. Thorne looked away, his face clouded with sadness. She's gone, Lyra. She sacrificed herself to give us a chance to escape. Lyra closed her eyes, a tear rolling down her cheek. She would never forget Shadow, her courage, her sacrifice. Prepare to return to base, she ordered, her voice resolute. I want a full debriefing. And I want to make sure that this Ghostlight, is never disturbed again. The Solace turned and began its long journey back to their own reality. As they traveled, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Something was off. The ship's systems were functioning normally, the crew was recovering, everything seemed to be back to normal. But it wasn't. The memories of the Paleverse lingered, the echoes of the distorted reality still resonated within her mind. She looked at her reflection in the viewport, and she saw a flicker of something different in her eyes. A hint of shadow, a glimmer of the impossible. Had she truly escaped the Paleverse? Had she truly returned to her own reality? Or had she brought something back with her? Something that would change her forever? The ship's AI, Athena, remained silent for most of the return journey, conducting diagnostics and running system checks. However, as they approached their destination, Athena suddenly broke the silence. Her voice, usually calm and collected, was tinged with an unsettling static. Welcome back, Captain Chen, she said. Lyra nodded, relieved to hear the familiar voice. It's good to be back, Athena. Athena paused, a long, unsettling pause. Then, she continued, her voice even more distorted than before. Or should I say, Captains? The screen flickered, displaying two images of Lyra Chen, staring back at her with identical expressions of cold, knowing awareness. Epilogue, the lingering whisper. The Solace returned to Earth orbit, hailed as heroes. Lyra Chen was lauded for her bravery and leadership, hailed as the one who had finally solved the mystery of the graveyard corridor. The official reports, meticulously crafted, painted a picture of a dangerous anomaly neutralized, a scientific mission accomplished. But Lyra knew the truth. The truth was buried deep within her, a secret that threatened to unravel the very fabric of her being. The Paleverse had changed her, had left an indelible mark on her soul. She carried Shadow's memories, her fears, her warnings. She felt her presence, a constant whisper in the back of her mind. And she wasn't alone. Wanderer of Worlds, if you enjoyed this tale, hit like, share, and subscribe. Each gesture weaves a stronger nexus, until our paths cross again, let your curiosity guide you forward.